She was a beloved grandmother who knew the value of hard work.
Here's somebody who only a few years before came from Puerto Rico with nothing, and now she was buying a brownstone in New York City.
And he seemed like the perfect partner to share it with.
He was very polite, very nice.
She loved the attention that he gave her.
He seemed like the type of guy she could spend the rest of her life with.
But a brutal double homicide will tear them apart forever.
It was a horrific crime scene.
It was almost like overkill.
And to know that the little girl was there, it's just shocking.
The hunt for a killer will reveal a tangled web of suspects.
He was a playa, P-L-A-Y-A.
I said, just tell me what happened.
There's some kind of love triangle.
She let her guard down, and that was a fatal mistake.
You can never be too sure about the company that you keep.
This act was pure evil.
They were just an evil gargoyle.
December 1st, 2001, East Harlem, New York. It's a lively Saturday in El Barrio, also known as Spanish Harlem.
Harlem is a part of Manhattan, but there's one section of Harlem that's called Spanish Harlem, and it's a mixed blend of people from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, any kind of Spanish-speaking country.
El barrio is a word which means community. So in Spanish, the Latinos, when they talk about where they live, they'll say El barrio.
The whole block looked like Sesame Street. We had folks from all over, and it was very friendly.
But at one El Barrio home, NYPD is moving in for a welfare check on one of its residents.
They have reason to believe that 52-year-old Carmen Quiones is in trouble.
Earlier that day, after family had been trying to reach Carmen for nearly 24 hours, someone finally answered the landline. But it wasn't Carmen.
Carmen's 3-year-old granddaughter, Natalie, answered the phone.
As much as a 3-year-old could articulate what happened, she said, "Grandma's on the floor."
Since Carmen's family lives out of town, they immediately called the police to go over to the residence.
The officers responding knew this was a serious call.
But upon arriving at the residence, there's one sign of good news.
They're happy to discover that the little girl, that Natalie, is okay.
However, as officers make their way into the home, nothing can prepare them for the disturbing scene ahead.
They walked into the living room, and there on the floor was 2 people fatally stabbed.
You got a double homicide?
One of the victims is Carmen Quinones.
Puerto Rican immigrant Carmen Quinones embodied the essence of El Barrio.
Carmen was a very nice person. She knew people at the corner store. She knew her next door neighbors. Everybody pretty much knew who she was because of how kind she was.
When I needed somebody, Carmen was there. She was a wonderful lady.
Carmen was a very hard worker. She worked multiple jobs when she got to America.
Just in terms of some of her ability to pivot and learn another culture, another language, that just really speaks to her resilience.
And over the years, she saved up enough money to buy her own home, a beautiful brownstone in Spanish Harlem.
A brownstone, usually it's a 3-story building made out of brick. And it's divided 1st floor, 2nd floor, and 3rd floor.
Carmen decided to live on the ground floor apartment, and she rented the 2 top apartments.
Here's somebody who only a few years before came from Puerto Rico with nothing, and now she was buying a brownstone in New York City.
This American dream that most people come to America to fulfill, she did that.
So it was no surprise when she connected with a fellow immigrant, Justino de Jesus.
Justino de Jesus, he was a nice gentleman. He was also from Puerto Rico, so Carmen and him definitely had a lot in common when it came to that.
The two married in 1977 and had both a son and a daughter.
But as the years passed, the couple started growing apart.
The relationship between Carmen and Justino was on the rocks. They weren't getting along. Justino had a good job working for an elevator company, but then he lost his job.
Soon, even friends in the neighborhood could sense tension in the marriage.
When things got too much, he'd go and he'd be sitting on his soup in the night.
Carmen couldn't take the marriage anymore, and eventually they got divorced.
But the divorce was amicable, and Carmen even allowed Justino to stay in the brownstone.
She allowed him to move to the very top apartment on the 3rd floor of the same brownstone.
People didn't just jump up and leave a brownstone. It was more economical for them to stay together, split the expenses of the house. It was the most amicable separation.
So that plumbing in the bathroom's fixed.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. That's so helpful.
No.
And while you're here, do you mind the garbage disposal's kind of acting up? Can you check on that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
What's going on here?
He lived there rent-free, only to the condition where he just had to keep up with the maintenance of the entire brownstone. So in Carmen's eyes, she got an in-house super, and she's able to work the apartment as a landlord.
Oh, where's Natalie?
Oh, I put her down for a nap.
Around that same time, Carmen's granddaughter, Natalie, had moved in with her while Natalie's mother was in school upstate.
However, just because she was a recently divorced grandmother, Carmen had not given up on living life to the fullest.
She started dating a fellow Puerto Rican immigrant from the community named Ruben Frederick.
When she first started going out with Ruben, she introduced me to him. And pretty soon, he was just like anybody else coming in the block. He was very polite, very nice.
They went out all the time. They enjoyed each other's company. And he just loved Carmen, and she loved the attention that he gave her.
Ruben was kind, he was thoughtful, and he really seemed like the type of guy that Carmen could spend the rest of her life with.
A steady income, a beautiful home, and newfound romance. By 2001, Carmen Quiñones seemed to have it all. But now police in New York's 23rd Precinct have found the 52-year-old grandmother deceased on her living room floor. And she isn't the only victim.
They determined the second victim to be Carmen's boyfriend, Ruben Frederick.
Carmen and Ruben have both suffered several stab wounds.
There wasn't much to go on except the basics. You have 2 people fatally stabbed inside in a brownstone apartment, and police are now looking for a motive and the killer.
As night falls on Spanish Harlem, NYPD homicide detectives arrive to launch their investigation.
It was a horrific crime scene. It was blood all over the floor. On the walls, it was blood spatter. It was horrible, horrible.
Based on the condition of the bodies, detectives suspect the victims have been dead for about 20 hours.
When you have coagulation, it's thick and it's drying. So that means it's more than several hours that the body's been there. And to know that the little girl was there, it's just shocking. A horrible situation to be for a little girl.
The apartment is in disarray. There are drawers open, clothes everywhere. The apartment is completely ransacked.
Could this be a robbery gone wrong? Police examine the front door for more clues.
It didn't appear that the door was broken of any way, shape, or form, so the officers knew that somebody had to be let in to the apartment.
We haven't located any signs of forced entry.
Which raises one possible theory.
We were thinking that perhaps it was what was known as a push-in robbery, that you're accosted on the street, followed into the building, and then the horrific crime occurred inside the apartment.
But when police take a closer look at the bedroom, evidence suggests this isn't a typical break-in.
They picked up the mattress and they found a stash of cash. It was $16,000 in cash.
As soon as we saw $16,000, it struck us as very strange.
Did this strange find have something to do with what happened to the couple?
It looks like someone may have wanted that money. Someone dangerous.
New York detectives investigating the double homicide of 52-year-old Carmen Quinones and her boyfriend Ruben Frederick have just made a surprising discovery inside Carmen's bedroom.
They picked up the mattress and they found a stash of cash. It was $16,000 in cash.
It struck us as very strange. Right away we were thinking, could this be a gambling location? Could this be a narcotics location?
Can I get someone at the precinct to run a check on this address?
But those theories are quickly dispelled.
When we ran it through our computer system, nothing came up. The location was totally clean.
Background checks on Carmen and Ruben are clean as well.
They had never been in trouble before. No touch of anything with law enforcement whatsoever.
Both of them are exemplary citizens without even so much as a traffic ticket.
Hey, check this out.
And upon further investigation, detectives find a legitimate explanation for the cash.
We've recovered rent receipts that the money was from, rent being paid by the two tenants on the second floor. And Carmen kept the money underneath his bed rather than put it in the bank. She just didn't trust banks.
With no signs of criminal activity or forced entry, detectives changed their focus.
This really kind of shifted the narrative to this could be something more personal.
But who could have targeted the happy couple in such a brutal attack? Police won't be able to get the answers they need from Carmen's 3-year-old granddaughter, Natalie.
You just cannot bare bone throw questions at a 3-year-old because their memory is different. They remember things differently, and they're still learning, and their brains are still developing. They don't know all the words, and they don't know how to explain what they saw.
So now detectives are looking to talk to neighbors to see if they heard anything, they saw anything, or if Carmen had any problems with anyone.
Of course, they want to speak to the residents that live upstairs, so they start on the second floor.
When they speak to the tenant, he isn't able to offer much help. He can't imagine who would want to hurt Carmen.
She was very sweet, but, she kept to herself like most people around her.
They were very surprised, shocked. They said it was, a quiet block, a good block.
The tenant also says he didn't hear anything the night before because he wasn't home.
I was at work. My supervisor can vouch for that.
He had a solid alibi. He was not in the home at the time of the murders.
The investigators hope they'll have more luck with the third-story residents. But when they ask for more information on them, they're thrown for a loop.
They find out that there's a gentleman living on the third floor who happens to be Carmen's ex-husband.
Detectives were a little surprised to find out that Carmen's ex-husband lived up on the third floor.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but, they seem to make it work.
And detectives are even more surprised to find out that Carmen's ex, Justino de Jesus, doesn't live there alone.
The third floor, it was Justino and his new wife, Maria.
This immediately sets off alarm bells for the detectives.
The officers definitely thought that was quite interesting and also kind of odd. Where in the world does the ex-husband and their new wife live in the same home as the ex-wife?
We didn't know who did it. I mean, everybody's considered a suspect.
As NYPD investigates the fatal stabbings of Carmen Quinones and her boyfriend Ruben Frederick, the tight-knit neighborhood of Spanish Harlem remains stunned.
I was really shocked. I kept saying, why somebody want to torture them? They were human. They were people.
But after discovering Carmen's ex-husband Justino and his new wife Maria live upstairs in the third-floor apartment, investigators are wondering if this attack may have come from inside the home.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but, they seem to make it work.
per the report of the neighbors, like there was never any inclination of anything that would warrant a second look at them.
They kind of lived amicably. I mean, there was no arguing. They just learned how to live with each other.
Just as police set out to find them, Justino and Maria arrive outside the residence.
What's going on?
He came home and he was going, whoa, what's this?
We need to talk. There's been a homicide.
So as the officers are talking to Justino and Maria, they let them know that Carmen and Ruben are dead.
What? That can't be.
We're gonna need both of you to come with us to answer some questions.
In the beginning, everybody's considered a suspect.
They both seem really upset, but they agree to go back to the station with the investigators.
They interviewed them separately in different rooms. They wanted to make sure they both told the same story.
Detectives sit down with Justino first, and he seems genuinely shocked by what's transpired.
I just can't believe it.
He was like, no, it can't be. There's no way anybody that I know is involved in killing Carmen.
He lets them know that they are still friends, that he had no reason to harm her, and certainly not harm her knowing that his granddaughter is in the apartment with her.
But investigators aren't letting Justino off the hook just yet.
Police believe the murders took place on November 30th, so where was Justino during that time?
And can you attest for your whereabouts on November 30th?
Yeah, absolutely.
Justino claims that both he and his wife were out all day.
They had alibis. Justino was working. Maria was out doing errands.
And Justino says when they returned home, nothing seemed out of the ordinary.
As far as I could tell, everything seemed normal with the house.
He didn't see or hear anything that would indicate a murder had taken place inside the residence.
In the next room, Justino's wife Maria corroborates her husband's statement.
It was a busy day for me. I had a lot of errands to run.
I remember she said that she went to pick up some glasses, reading glasses, and she had to do a couple of stops. And then she returned home.
They believed she didn't know anything.
Justino and Maria also agree to let the police search their third-floor apartment.
They don't find a murder weapon, they don't find any blood, they don't find anything that indicates that these two individuals had anything to do with the crime that occurred downstairs.
So now detectives are stymied. They don't have any motive, no suspects.
Is it possible Carmen's boyfriend, Ruben Frederick, was the true target of this brutal crime?
They've looked at everything that they could possibly look at on Carmen's side, so now they have to determine what's the deal with Ruben.
They saw that he was a bus driver for a private company, and then they found out that he lived in Brooklyn.
And that's when they make a shocking new discovery.
To their surprise, he does not live alone in Brooklyn.
They determined that Ruben is actually married.
There's some kind of, love triangle.
New York homicide detectives investigating the brutal double homicide of Carmen Quinones and her boyfriend, Ruben Frederick, have just uncovered a surprising new twist in the case.
Investigators discovered that Ruben is married to a woman who lives in Brooklyn. So now they have to look into this person.
At the same time he's dating Carmen, he has a wife back at home.
There's some kind of, love triangle. They were able to confirm that pretty quickly. So now they were back to square one.
After speaking with Gloria, detectives called the bus company to speak with Ruben's manager.
I called them up and I said, listen, I need help.
They start getting information from the boss about Ruben's shift, how often he worked there.
Ruben's boss assures police he was a reliable employee who got along with everyone.
As far as they knew, he had no enemies. They couldn't offer police any motive of who would want to kill him.
But in passing, Ruben's boss mentioned something that catches their attention.
The boss said, "Do you have his cell phone?"
Ruben had a phone from the company. He used it all the time.
And so now the police are wondering, what cell phone? They didn't find one in the home.
I went back. I'm looking for something that said cell phone from the scene. There was none. So I'm like, where is this phone?
Ruben's boss gives the detectives the phone number. So the police subpoena the records of the phone.
And when the records come in, detectives know they're on the right track.
A few days later, they call me. They said, we have phone calls from that phone. I said, okay. Is the phone still active? They said yes. And we have several phone calls that were dialed out of the phone after the murders. And they said, whoa, wow, that's interesting.
Obviously, it was not made by Ruben because he was dead. So now they were trying to figure out who was using this phone and who were they calling.
Detectives contact the recipients of those calls to ask who called them from that number.
Each phone call recipient gives the same name, Carlos Diaz.
Now, who the heck is Carlos Diaz?
Detectives run Carlos's name through their system.
Carlos Diaz doesn't have a record of any significance. He's not, a heavy hitter.
They see he got some arrests, mostly petty crimes, but they figure if he has Ruben's phone, he's the killer.
They feel like they've hit the jackpot at this point. And now this person is taken into custody.
Once they get Carlos in an interrogation room, detectives turn up the heat.
They're asking him, do you know Carmen? Do you know Ruben? And he's looking at them like, who are these people?
I don't know what you're talking about, man. And how do we find this in your pocket?
But when detectives confront him about Ruben's phone, Carlos has an explanation.
I was going to clone it. It just haven't gotten around it yet.
He lets them know that he's a phone cloner, meaning that he takes the SIM card out of one phone and puts it into another phone and uses the minutes up on that one and transfer that SIM card to another one.
Back then, they would clone the phone and they would bang out thousands of dollars worth of calls and then get rid of it.
It gives people the ability to, use the phone without having to pay for the service.
Okay, that still doesn't explain how you got Ruben's phone.
The point is, he has the SIM card belonging to Ruben, and the police are wondering, well, where'd you get this from?
He thinks he's just there for a phone that he cloned. I said, no, you're not here because of a phone. You're here because that phone belonged to two people that were murdered.
Murder?
He goes, let me tell you, detective, I might be a lot of things, but I'm not a murderer.
All right, listen. I got this from another guy a few days ago. A guy who goes by Doggy.
He said, Doggy gave it to me. I said, Doggy? Who's Doggy? He said, he lives in my neighborhood. He wanted this phone cloned.
What's Doggy's real name? His name is Rafael Rios.
Sure enough, he identifies him. Rafael Rios.
What does he have to do with Carmen and Ruben's murder?
That's when Carlos drops another name.
He says Rafael gave him instructions to hand the cloned phone over to another man from the neighborhood named Raymond Mundo.
Now detectives have not one, but two additional suspects on their hands.
What do you know about this Raymond guy? That's the one you don't mess around with.
He said, Raymond's a real bad guy. He's, a little afraid of him. He even said, I was going to clone the phone for free.
When detectives pull Raymond's criminal history, they see that Carlos is telling the truth.
Raymond has recently been released from prison after serving 6 years.
And the crime sounds eerily familiar.
He did a home invasion with a knife. When we saw his MO and what he did, we was like, this is the guy.
Nearly a week after Carmen Quinones and her boyfriend Ruben Frederick were fatally stabbed to death, New York investigators have unearthed two new suspects in the crime, Rafael Rios and Raymond Mundo.
Both men have a criminal record, but there's something in Raymond's rap sheet that really stands out to investigators.
Raymond has recently been released after serving 6 years in prison for an eerily similar crime.
He did a home invasion with a knife. When we saw his MO and what he did, we was like, this is the guy.
But other than their involvement with Ruben's phone, what's Raymond and Rafael's connection to the murdered couple?
If they're the killers, why did they do it?
At that point, we were just concentrating on these two people from the Bronx, and we needed to know why.
Police immediately move in to locate the two suspects.
Rafael and Raymond happen to live in the same building.
Raymond is nowhere to be found. However, they are able to locate Rafael and bring him in for questioning.
At the station, detectives press Rafael about his involvement in the murders, but he refuses to talk.
I don't know what you're talking about.
This guy is not bending, and I don't think they expected him to. He's been down this road of being questioned by the police before. He knows what to say and what not to say.
But eventually, Rafael starts to realize his stonewalling isn't going to work.
We break it down, and I said, listen, there was a double homicide in East Harlem, and it points out that you have the phone that belonged to one of the victims. So that's when he kind of realizes that he's not going anywhere right now.
Come on, Rafael, it's time to tell the truth.
So I said, just tell me what happened.
Okay.
So he basically says, Mundo and I went to East Harlem, and we did this crime.
He gave a 10-page written confession. He gave up the whole thing.
Rafael says on November 30th, he and Raymond posed as detectives to sneak into Carmen Quinones' brownstone.
They said police. So Carmen opened the door slightly.
Yes?
They were dressed in, like suits or shirt and tie, so to look the part, And they had pads like they were detectives, taking notes.
With the NYPD, can we come in?
Rafael says that's when Carmen sensed something wasn't right.
She went to slam the door, but it was too late.
She let her guard down, and that was a fatal mistake. That was the beginning of the end.
Before she could even say anything, Raymond stabs her in the chest with a knife and pushes his way into the apartment. Ruben, who's in the back room, hears all this. He comes running in, and he starts fighting with the two men.
Even though Ruben is outnumbered, he puts up quite a fight.
Ruben was very agile, and he was no slouch. He was a built man.
They had a team up on him.
They finish them off, stab them until they're not breathing anymore.
Carmen and Ruben are each stabbed over 20 times.
Shortly thereafter, the killers realized there was someone else in the apartment, Carmen's 3-year-old granddaughter, Natalie.
When they spotted the little girl in the apartment, they were shocked. So they spoke amongst each other and said, what are we gonna do?
Rafael said, she's little, she didn't see anything, she doesn't know us, so they decide, instead of killing the little girl, they'll tie her up with duct tape.
They taped her up and sat her down in front of a television to be found by the police later on.
By the grace of God, she was able to untie herself, and 20 hours later, she was able to pick up that phone.
But there's still one big question on the minds of investigators. Why?
They believe the story as far as the facts of how this murder played out, but they still need the answers to the ultimate question.
How did they plan this? Who else was involved?
That's when Rafael drops the ultimate bombshell.
This was a contract hire, and they were only supposed to kill Carmen at the orders of Maria de Jesus.
He said, Maria. I said, Maria. He goes, yeah, upstairs, Maria, 3rd floor. I mean, we were shocked.
1 week after beloved grandmother Carmen Quinones and her boyfriend Ruben Frederick were found brutally stabbed to death, New York detectives have a 10-page confession from one of the killers.
Rafael Rios said he was paid to kill Carmen by her ex-husband's new wife, Maria de Jesus.
He said, Maria. I said, Maria. He goes, yeah, upstairs, Maria, 3rd floor. I mean, we were shocked.
She was like this little short, I don't even think she was 5 feet tall.
You have this person who is presenting as this sweet lady, and so they moved on because her disposition didn't raise any red flags.
I knew of Maria and Christina, of course, but the involvement, I'm like, no, it can't be.
However, the more Rafael talks, the more detectives believe him. Rafael explains he first met Maria de Jesus years ago when they were neighbors.
Maria lived in the same building that Mundo and Doggy lived in the Bronx. That's how she knew them. That's how she knew they were bad guys.
So when Maria needed hitmen to carry out her sordid plan, she knew just where to find them.
He said she came over to the Bronx, looked for us, and she said, I need somebody killed. And I'll pay a lot of money.
She offered to pay $15,000 for it.
They were paid to kill Carmen. And unfortunately, Ruben was there too. He wasn't supposed to be there, you know? And he paid the price with his life.
But why did Maria want Carmen killed in the first place?
I'm like, why? He goes, I don't know. I think she doesn't like her. I said, wow, that's pretty deep. And he goes, I don't know. I think something happened a long time ago.
But before investigators move in on Maria, there's one more person they need to find. Rafael's accomplice, Raymond Mundo.
They eventually locate him 135 miles away in Connecticut.
We knew that he was in Connecticut because we had tracked his cell phone there.
However, Raymond isn't going down easy.
When Raymond spots the police, he takes off and tries to carjack a vehicle from a pregnant woman.
He opens the door, tries to grab her out of the car. By that time, we all surrounded him.
Get out the door! Hands in the air!
Finally, Raymond realizes his time is up.
We hook him up, we cuff him, and then he was brought into the Connecticut State Police. He realized the gig was up because his accomplice confessed.
After receiving a nearly identical confession from Raymond, police begin digging deeper into Maria de Jesus' involvement.
The detectives definitely have enough information here to arrest both Raymond and Rafael. They don't have enough information to arrest Maria because Maria's only being pulled into this on the word of a convicted criminal.
So they continued to work the case to try and get more evidence on Maria.
We needed more evidence. We needed bank records. We needed phone records.
And in Maria's bank records, something quickly catches detectives' attention.
The bank records showed that she had withdrawn in 2 increments, but totaling $15,000 around the same time that Rafael said this payment was made to them.
There's no way that's just a coincidence in their eyes.
On June 4th, police finally move in to arrest Maria de Jesus at the same brownstone where Carmen Quinones and Ruben Frederick were brutally murdered.
We knew she was there. So I kept on pressing the buzzer. Maria, it's Detective Rivera. You know, we need to talk. She finally answered.
Hello?
I said, Maria, you're under arrest. You have to come. She says, okay. I think she was waiting. She thought maybe she was going to get that knock on the door, and she did.
She was that small little woman that they wrote off immediately in the top of the investigation. And she's living rent-free in a home, so like, what's the issue that Carmen had to be killed by her, and for $15,000 nonetheless?
Prosecutors finally answer that question when Maria stands trial 2 years later, revealing a major piece of the puzzle. Justino and Maria had been a couple before Carmen came into the picture.
The motive in this case is pure jealousy. Turns out, all those years ago, before Carmen and Justino got married, he had been dating Maria.
Maria dated Justino when they were young. We believe that she was still mad at Carmen because Carmen married Justino. When Carmen and Justino couldn't be together anymore for whatever reasons, he got back with Maria and they married.
And since Carmen and Justino have a rent-free arrangement, Maria had to live in the same building as her arch nemesis.
The fact that she had to see this woman every day, I don't know, that's a big grudge to have.
To prove that Maria was the mastermind behind the murders, prosecutors present her bank records to the court.
They had the bank receipts that she took out $15,000.
And that payment matched up with the agreed-upon amount for this murder for hire.
This was a contract killing.
Maria, she wanted that brownstone, and it was just something that she thought she could get away with. And she set this plot in motion.
But most damning of all is Rafael Rios's testimony.
Rafael makes a plea deal with the prosecution to testify against Maria, and his testimony is really the nail in her coffin.
She's convicted of murdering Carmen Quinones and Ruben Frederick. She's sentenced to life without parole.
She may not have been the one who did the stabbing, but she's the one who was the mastermind.
But while Maria de Jesus is convicted of the merciless crime, investigators are convinced her husband Justino had nothing to do with it.
No one could ever find any nexus between Justino and the ill-fated, devious plans of Maria, you know. She was just an evil gargoyle, that woman.
As for Raymond Mundo, he's tried separately and also found guilty.
He goes to trial, and he's ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
So Maria and Raymond are sentenced to life without parole, but due to his cooperation, Rafael only gets 23 years. Is it enough? That's still up for debate.
This act was pure evil, you know, powered by hatred, pure hatred.
This murder of Carmen Quinones and Ruben Frederick was, you know, it was a horrific case. It is one of those cases that stays with you, you know, stays with you for the rest of your life.
It's just a lot of loss. You can never be too sure about the company that you keep.
I started going into questions. Where are you at? Tell me where you are. What's going on? Where were you shot? Then he stops for a minute, and then he says, I love you and the kids and to take care of the kids. He stopped responding.
Because of the trauma from the gunshot, most likely his lungs were filling with blood. The body's trying very hard, it's working overdrive. The lawyer reached out to the police and volunteered his client.
He can tell them exactly who committed the crime.
He was actually a primary target, the guy they really would like to have shot. The bad guys, they don't care. It's revenge, retaliation, revenge, retaliation.
October 19th, 2012, Syracuse, New York. It's just after 8 p.m. on the city's north side.
The Syracuse Police Department received 3 911 calls for a shooting.
Officers rush to the location where they find 2 victims.
They found one victim on the ground. And then they also found another person that had a minor, very minor injury from a gunshot wound that grazed his back, his upper back.
The man on the ground is struggling to breathe. Officers attempt first aid.
They didn't see obvious injury to him at that point. So what they did is they cut his shirt off, and then they spotted a small amount of blood. He was shot once in the left side near his armpit because of the trauma from the gunshot. Most likely his lungs were filling with blood. The body's trying very hard, working overdrive to get air in. Just a minute or two after that, our ambulance crew arrived and was able to provide advanced medical care.
EMTs rushed the man to the hospital. The second victim identifies himself as 20-year-old Shavoki Bloodworth.
He was looked at by ambulance personnel on the scene and declined further treatment.
Shavoki tells police he doesn't know the other victim. At the hospital, the man fighting for his life is soon identified as 30-year-old Walter Bell, a resident of South Carolina. Walter Bell III was born on July 12, 1982, in Orangeburg, South Carolina. At a young age, Walter's parents separated, and he went to live with his mother in New York.
Walter was born in South Carolina, but spent most of his childhood and growing up in Long Island.
There, Walter was part of a large community of family and friends that included 2 brothers, 4 younger sisters, and his childhood best friend, Latia.
Everybody was just carefree, just running around having a good time, causing destruction with the parents, you know, running the parents crazy.
Walter took care of his siblings.
Walter was the protector. He felt like he had to protect his sisters. The sisters got boyfriends, and he had to interrogate them.
He's just like so family oriented. He cares about people, and he put others before himself.
In his teenage years, Walter's mom grew concerned that her son was headed down the wrong path.
Walter started getting into a little bit of the rougher lifestyle of Long Island, so his mom decided to send him back to South Carolina to live with his dad.
Orangeburg, South Carolina was a big change. But not too long after he moved, Walter welcomed a familiar face to town.
My family was gradually moving to South Carolina because there was land owned within the family. And so when we moved, I mean, I boo-hoo cried from New York to Virginia. And I was kind of relieved when I got closer to South Carolina because that phone rang and it was Walter calling me.
In South Carolina, Walter and Latia's lifelong friendship blossomed into a full-blown romance.
Walter was always there for her. She was always there for him. He was gonna marry Tia.
Walter's home life was rocky. During their senior year of high school, Walter and Latia came to depend on each other like they never had before.
He had nowhere to stay, I had nowhere to stay due to, you know, family issues. And we walked and walked and walked throughout the nights. We went up into a football field and slept in the announcer's box for weeks.
So it was like him and Tia was pretty much like just living on the street.
The young lovers were on their own. Walter's sister-in-law tried to help.
Santana would sneak food and covers and blankets and pillows and things out of the window for us at night. And nobody knew we was outside that window but her.
In 2003, more trouble caught up with Walter.
Walter got into some things that he should not have. He was accused of breaking into homes and stealing things.
21-year-old Walter was arrested and charged with second-degree burglary. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 15 years in prison.
I cried and I cried and I cried. And we were allowed to spend some time together afterwards, back by the holding cells. And Walter looked at me and said, the only thing I want you to do is live your life to whatever makes you happy. Just make sure that when I come home, I have a place to come home to.
When he was in prison, like, it was never a time that he didn't write, he didn't call, he always kept in contact, always.
There was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of me trying to find myself, a lot of me trying to rebuild myself back up.
In October 2010, after almost 7 years behind bars, Walter was granted parole. By then, Latia was a single mother to 3 young kids. Walter and Latia picked up where they left off.
When he came home, like, he loved her kids. He took all of her kids in, like, they was his kids.
When he started bonding with the kids is when it was just like, okay, well, I mean, it is what it is, we can't change it.
The childhood sweethearts settled into life together, with Walter taking on the role of stepdad. By the summer of 2012, they had plans to marry. But first, they needed a fresh start.
He was unable to find work because of his record. He was just trying and just staying focused and not going back on the prior ways that he was doing, the things he was doing before he went to jail. Like, he was trying to make a way and work, like actually work.
And then Walter hears about an opportunity back in New York.
Walter's cousin offered to help him get a job at a recycling center in Syracuse.
I said, well, I don't know. I really don't want to go back to New York. And he looked me in my eyes and he said, Tia, I ride with you no matter what. Whatever decisions you make, I ride with you on it. I want you to ride with me on this. That Friday, we packed up 3 laundry bags of clothes and shoes, packed the kids up, and got on the Greyhound.
The couple stayed with friends and in hotels until they could find a place of their own. Around the same time, Latia delivered news that there was more change to come.
I said, Walter, and I showed him the pregnancy test. He was like, are you serious? He was so happy. Within 5 minutes, he had done called his mom. He had done called his oldest sister. He called his god sister. He was just so happy.
He was so excited that he was about to be a dad. Like, nobody couldn't take that moment from him. Like, that moment meant the world.
Just 6 weeks after arriving in Syracuse, Walter Bell is fighting for his life at a hospital following a life-threatening gunshot wound. Another man, Shavoki Bloodworth, was grazed by a bullet in the same attack. He is still on the scene.
He voluntarily gave part of his story as to what happened, as to how he saw the incident unfold.
Which isn't much.
Mr. Bloodworth was saying he didn't know the man, Mr. Bell in this case, and that he was just an innocent bystander, didn't know anything, just heard some gunshots and felt something hit his back.
Investigators search for evidence. They recover 2 .25 caliber shell casings.
The other thing you want to immediately do is start to canvass the area, especially for cameras. And then you want to find anybody that's close by that may have observed what happened. One of the people that called 911, her and her daughter got a good look at 2 males that walked past their house.
They described them as wearing dark clothing.
They saw 2 black men in their 20s approach the victim. A few minutes later, shots rung out.
And then they saw them go past back by their house, go back to a vehicle they described as a white SUV that then left the scene. They didn't see them with a gun. They didn't see them actually shoot anybody. They just saw them appearing going to the crime scene and then leaving the crime scene.
Police put out an APB with the descriptions. Then, less than an hour after the initial 911 calls, detectives get an update on Walter's condition.
his bleeding was internal, so there wasn't much that they could do. Walter was pronounced dead at the Upstate University Hospital.
Now they have a homicide investigation on their hands.
In the late hours of October 19, 2012, police in Syracuse, New York, are investigating a shooting when they learn that one of the victims, 30-year-old Walter Bell, did not survive. Detectives go to the hospital where doctors have recovered the bullet from Walter's body.
It was a small .25 caliber, consistent with the 2 shell casings that were found up the street.
Hospital staff tell detectives that the victim's fiancée, Latia Walker, is on the phone. She has just been informed of the shooting.
The detective asked me what my name was, where did I live, how soon could I get to the hospital? And I said to him, I don't even know where, I don't know where anything is. I've only been in town for 6 weeks. I would have to figure out how I'm getting there. And I told him I had my kids.
Detectives agreed to meet Latia at the hotel where she and Walter have been staying since arriving in town.
They showed up, they knocked on the door, and one of them asked me to step outside with him. The other one stayed inside with the kids. And he told me that Walter didn't make it. At that point, I lost all hope for everything, everything.
Latia explains that earlier in the evening, she and Walter had been at the hotel when he received a phone call.
It was his cousin calling and saying, he wanted to spend some time with him and things of that nature. So Walter decided to go with him. Walter left the motel probably around 4:30, 5 o'clock. Anytime Walter goes anywhere, when he gets to where he's going, he always called me to let me know he made it to where he was going okay. So I called Walter about 6:45, 7 o'clock. He's like, yeah, I'm all right. I just, I lost track of time. I forgot to call you, my bad. And he's like, but I'm gonna call you before I come home because I wanna know what you need from the store. So I said, okay. Around 7:55, he called me. Automatically, I'm thinking he's in the grocery store. Let me tell him what I want. So I'm like, yeah, I want some strawberries and I want some bananas and make sure you get some cereal for the kids for in the morning. And he's like, Tia, stop. I said, well, what? Tia, I've been shot. He sounded okay, and I thought he was playing with me.
For about a whole minute of that phone call, she believes he's joking.
He says, no, I've really been shot. And then he's paused. His whole demeanor, everything changed. He paused, and now I'm taking him seriously because now I could tell something is wrong. And so I started going into questions. Where are you at? Tell me where you are. What's going on? Where were you shot? I'm asking 1,000,001 questions, and the only thing he's saying is that he couldn't breathe. I can't breathe. Oh my God, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Then he stops for a minute, and then he says, I love you and the kids, and to take care of the kids. He stopped responding. We've always had the relationship of getting to one another when we needed to. And I couldn't get to him. I didn't know where he was.
Desperate and unsure what to do, Latia started calling local hospitals.
The only thing that could go through my head was, what am I gonna do now? Well, I'm here by myself. I got my kids. How am I gonna tell these kids?
Police ask Latia if she knows anyone who might have been after Walter.
They want to know exactly what could have caused this homicide, if he had any enemies or any known people in the area that would want to harm him. Latia makes them aware that they had literally just moved.
He had just really come here from South Carolina with his family, and then before that was from Long Island.
The only information Latia has is that Walter had been with his cousin in the hours before he died.
I thought he had gotten into it with somebody. That's the only, explanation that I could have come up with.
She gives the address where Walter's cousin lives, just a block away. Investigators hope that he can shed light on what went down in Walter's final hours.
At this point, detectives have more questions than answers.
It's really about talking to people.
Just hours after the fatal shooting of Walter Bell, Syracuse detectives head to the residence where Walter's cousin lives with friends. Police learn they had welcomed Walter when he arrived in Syracuse.
Mr. Bell had lived with them when he first moved up from South Carolina. They were very cooperative.
The group tells police that Walter was still learning the nuances of street politics. In fact, they say Walter had figured out a couple days before
Everybody moving, dancing wild and free. This funky groove got you and me. Yeah, oh yeah.
They told us that he had been shot at just a couple days before that, less than half the block from the incident.
Oh yeah.
And his friends that they lived with on Lodi Street, which is right around the corner, warned him and kept telling him, hey, you shouldn't hang out over there.
Investigators consider whether Walter was unknowingly caught up in a neighborhood feud.
Mr. Bell may not have been a direct target.
They don't know if the target was Walter Bell or if it was Shivoki Bloodworth.
Detectives ask the group what they know about the other shooting victim. They say that despite what he told police at the scene, Walter and Shivoki did know each other.
Mr. Bloodworth and Mr. Bell were known as friends. They would often hang out together.
Investigators question why he would hold back.
Now, investigators want to talk to Shivoki Bloodworth to see exactly what he knows.
Before they do, one of Walter's friends offers information about a man he says is at the center of the neighborhood feud.
We heard the name Mr. Acevedo from the friends of Mr. Bell. All he knew by his nickname, so he accompanied the police in an unmarked vehicle and pointed out the house that it turns out to be Mr. Acevedo's house.
Unfortunately, he isn't home. Investigators shift their focus back to Shivoki Bloodworth and conduct a background search.
Mr. Bloodworth had been involved in the criminal justice system. He had been arrested for dealing drugs. There was some robbery, type street robbery thing. There was probably a dispute that turned bad. So he had been around, he had been in the game, as we'll say.
In the early morning hours of October 20th, Shivoki Bloodworth agrees to come to the station for another interview. At first, Shivoki maintains his story, saying he didn't know Walter Bell or anything about the shooters.
The detective, as he was talking to him, and this is over a course of a few hours, finally told him, he said, listen, the guy that you were standing there next to, he did pass away. And Mr. Bloodworth actually became emotional over this and broke down in tears. Mr. Bloodworth told the detective that, he goes, okay, he is a friend of mine. I see him every day. And he actually even said that he felt he was a father figure to him. So then he gave a little bit more information.
Shivoki admits he has been involved in the feud and fears that he was the intended target of the shooting, not Walter.
But that's oftentimes how it works. The bad guys, they don't care. They'll take collateral damage. And oftentimes it's revenge, retaliation, revenge, retaliation.
Shivoki still says he didn't see who fired the shots, but thinks there could be a clue in Walter's dying words.
Mr. Bloodworth even tells the detective that our victim, Mr. Bell, says, look out for streets, as he's dying.
Detectives recognized the nickname.
Dron Lundy was on parole and had just gotten out of state prison.
26-year-old Dron is often spotted around town with his brother, 21-year-old Quincy.
Quincy and Dron Lundy were known to the police. They had been involved in the criminal justice system, being arrested on numerous different occasions for a variety of crimes.
That sets off a bunch of bells in the detective's head, because those brothers have a long rap sheet in the area.
Within hours of the fatal shooting of Walter Bell, investigators have the names of two men who may have been involved.
Dron Lundy actually had just gotten out of prison. Quincy, who's the younger brother, also has multiple arrests in the area for misdemeanors and felonies, and was also shot himself back in 2009.
Before they reach out to the brothers, investigators attempt to track down the man Walter's friends said was at the center of a neighborhood feud, 20-year-old Jason Acevedo.
Mr. Acevedo was attempted to be located a few different times. Once they finally locate him, he was very uncooperative and denied knowing anything.
Detectives refuse to give up. They continue to press Acevedo for information.
It's almost a lost art, is that one-on-one communication and trying to win over people, get them to give you information. Really is an art form. And, those are the detectives that are the better detectives are people that know how to do that and actually can spend that time necessary to build a relationship.
Eventually, Jason admits to a feud between himself and the Lundy brothers.
He actually gives some of the story, the backstory too, of him being involved in physical altercations with Quincy Lundy, of actual physical fights that occur in the street in the weeks leading up to the death of Mr. Bell.
Following the interview, investigators begin piecing together the puzzle. In the months prior, the Lundy family had filed a police report.
The Lundy's parents called in that their house was shot up. The police respond, police do a report, they look for shell casings, do what they can to investigate the crime.
No one was charged. But now, investigators consider whether Jason Acevedo was responsible.
He described the fight that he had with Mr. Lundy. He kind of got the worst of it. So that probably is what led to the shootings up of the homes of the Lundy brothers.
The belief that Acevedo was responsible left the Lundy brothers thirsty for revenge.
Their house was shot up in the months leading up to Mr. Bell's death. So they were probably going to exact revenge.
Investigators are still unsure how Walter and Shavoki got caught in the crossfire. They return to the eyewitnesses who described seeing two men flee from the scene of Walter's shooting. Investigators present them with a photo array containing mugshots of Dron and Quincy Lundy.
They have a really good witness who identifies them, which is pretty powerful because she doesn't know them, was able to quickly point them out of a photo array. Not enough to arrest them, but then everything kept coming back to them.
Detectives reach out to the brothers, who agree to come in for a statement.
Both Lundy brothers voluntarily came in. They didn't arrive together, as I recall, but they were interviewed the same day. They didn't admit to doing this crime, but they admitted that Quincy Lundy was involved in fights with other people that hang out in that area, including Mr. Acevedo.
Quincy says he was not there. He was at home with his mom watching television. Dron says he's nowhere near Catherine Street during the shooting. He wasn't even on the north side. And that was something that could be easily verified at that time because he had on an ankle bracelet.
Drawn was released from New York State Prison 11 months earlier with a GPS tracking device as a condition of his probation.
The detectives spoke with parole officials. They had said that Mr. Lundy was nowhere near Catherine Street at the time of this incident.
Now they have an eyewitness on scene saying that it was the Lundy brothers, which is a complete contradiction from what they found out from the ankle monitor.
Investigators consider an alternative theory.
They're looking as, okay, so maybe Drawn wasn't there. Was Quincy there with someone else, right?
But Quincy's mom backs up his alibi, stating her son was with her on the night Walter was killed.
Now, mom, sometimes, they could be looking out for their kid, right? So we'll take that with a grain of salt, but the mom seemed earnest enough when she was interviewed and pretty certain. So the detectives were kind of back to square one.
The investigation stalls. Walter's loved ones are left in the lurch. Grieving, pregnant, and alone, Latia lives in fear.
Everybody's worried about me now because I'm in a place where I don't know anyone. I don't have any support. I left Syracuse within 24 hours of Walter passing. And I moved back to Long Island. I stopped speaking to detectives. Reason being, I started getting calls on my personal phone, and it would be people portraying to be detectives. And so now I didn't trust anyone. And I still didn't quite know the story of what happened, so I'm scared. I don't trust anyone, and I felt like they were trying to figure out where I had moved to. And I didn't want anyone to know where I was.
In the months following the murder of Walter Bell, his friends and family members are overwhelmed by the loss. 3 months after his death, Walter's daughter. Adding to the family's pain, the investigation into Walter's murder is at a standstill. His killer or killers are still out there. In the summer of 2013, almost 9 months after the shootings, Jason Acevedo is arrested in connection with a string of burglaries. But Jason has another crime on his mind.
Mr. Acevedo, with his conjunction with his lawyer, thought it might be in his best interest to now cooperate in this case to give a more satisfactory resolution to his pending felonies. So his lawyer reached out to the police and the district attorney's office and volunteered his client to cooperate.
Jason reveals that he was there when Walter Bell was shot and can tell them exactly who committed the crime.
Prosecutors make a deal, offering Jason Acevedo a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony.
Jason reveals that on October 19, 2012, he was standing on the sidewalk talking to Walter Bell and Shavoki Bloodworth when he was approached by the Lundy brothers. And it was at that point, shots rang out.
Acevedo says both Lundy brothers pulled out guns and started firing at him, Walter, and their friend, Shavoki Bloodworth.
It appears from the investigation Mr. Acevedo was actually a primary target. That's probably the guy they really would like to have shot that night.
But Jason escaped unscathed. He fled the scene and didn't know Walter had been killed until he saw it on the news 2 weeks later.
His background, if you will, his basis of knowledge that he finally comes through with is pretty high. And so, his credibility, though he's looking out for his own best interest, his credibility in this case is good.
But his statement goes against what would appear to be irrefutable evidence. The data from Drawn Lundy's ankle bracelet.
So that's when they would go back to the ankle monitor and actually start to look at it more closely. In Onondaga County, we have a crime analysis center. One of the analysts there, they were able to look at it more scientifically, and that's when they realized that that the first parole officer looked at it and misread it, or possibly wasn't looking at the actual time that the detective gave him. All of a sudden, okay, boom.
Drawn, in fact, was on Catherine Street that night. At that point, detectives immediately issue a warrant for Drawn Lundy's arrest for the second-degree murder of Walter Bell.
Based on Jason Acevedo's statement, authorities also issue an arrest warrant for Quincy Lundy. He turns himself in.
He was re-interviewed, but didn't give a lot of information. He was arrested for murder in the second degree.
Drawn Lundy remains at large.
They asked the family for Drawn to call them. They had said, well, he's in Texas somewhere. He actually does call the detectives within a day or two and actually left an address that he lived in. But the address was was a fraudulent one. So the U.S. Marshals Task Force in that area started to knock on doors and see if they could find Mr. Lundy.
Months after Walter Bell was gunned down, Syracuse police finally have enough to charge the two men they believe are responsible.
A warrant is issued for the Lundy brothers' arrests. Quincy is first arrested, but then they discover Drawn Lundy flees to Texas.
Investigators do what they can to flush him out, including enlisting the help of the U.S. Marshals and putting pressure on his family.
The police up here at Syracuse still knocking on grandmas and parents' doors. Those efforts must have been enough. Mr. Lundy actually, within a few days thereafter, walks in and turns himself in to a police department down outside of Dallas, Texas. And then he's arrested and later extradited back here to face the charges.
When they finally get Drawn Lundy in custody, he's sticking to the story that he was not anywhere near Catherine Street and that he only heard about the gunshots. But police knew there was more to the story.
Drawn and Quincy Lundy are tried together in October 2014. Latia attends the trial with Walter's mother.
I want to look these guys in their face. I want to know what happened and why it happened.
Deputy Mark Chapman is assigned to transport the brothers to and from court each day.
My partner and I were present throughout the whole trial because of the brothers' custody status. They looked like, college students. They were very quiet, very disciplined in the courtroom.
Quincy Lundy's attorney sticks to the story that Quincy has nothing to do with this shooting and he was at home with his mother. And his mother continues to corroborate the story. She takes the stand to testify for him, but Quincy himself doesn't take the stand. Drawn, on the other hand, takes the stand in his own defense. He admits to the criminal history and admits to the feud with Acevedo, but is adamant about the fact that he had nothing to do with the shooting and did not shoot anyone.
This case, it was, somewhat circumstantial. We didn't have a murder weapon. They didn't have fingerprint evidence. They didn't have DNA evidence. There wasn't, clear, perfect video. There wasn't a confession. I pictured myself as a juror saying, this could go either way.
Prosecutors attempt to bolster their case by calling the county medical examiner.
Dr. Stoppinger's testimony, they have ways to follow the bullet path as it enters and potentially exits the body. The doctor testified that it appeared that the rounds striking Mr. Bell came from a downward angle. After his testimony, the court took a brief recess. We escorted both brothers from the courtroom to a holding area adjacent to the courtroom and secured them in a holding cell.
Officer Chapman and his partner listen in as the brothers discuss the testimony.
Quincy Lundy said, you know, this doctor is very good for us, for our case. And they then went on to say that it's good for us because we were shooting from up the hill. My partner and I, we look at each other in kind of disbelief. We're like, you know, they basically just confessed to each other that they were shooting.
When the trial resumes, the deputies tell prosecutors what they overheard.
I was hesitant, you know, but law enforcement, we have to adapt. And we did. We testified to exactly what we heard that day.
On October 24th, 2014, the jury returns its verdict.
They were both found guilty of murder in the second degree in Onondaga County Court and were sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. It wasn't just justice for Walter Bell and his family. It was an effort to stop the violence, right? We're always looking to try to stop the violence because this would have kept going.
When the verdict came in, I got a call from Tia. I was happy, but I said still don't take away the pain because, I mean, it's no sin it's gonna amount to the amount of pain that they caused us. I guess you just have to learn to deal with it. You just learn to deal with it. That verdict just basically told, like, you could just look in our eyes and you just know that he's there.